We're all fans of Harman Smith. Subscribe to the channel.
I was looking at the calendar today, and I'm just sort of like, April 30th. What is important about that day? What is significant about April 30th? And of course, the answer is April 30th is the day I met you. But then I started thinking a little bit harder. Wasn't there something important that was supposed to happen in April? Weren't we told by certain reliable leakers that there would be some major video game announcement today? Oh, that's right. We were told by Nate the Hate, or as I like to call him, Nate the Fake, that this month, April, we would get a shadow drop of Star Fox on Switch 2 by the end of the month. Okay, we got a specific hard date for it. We were told this, and everybody in the community rallied really hard to push this idea that this information was completely 100% reliable, that it was something to anticipate and something to look forward to, because Nintendo just announced Fox McCloud was in the Super Mario Galaxy movie. This has to be happening. This has to be a thing. Nate the Hate has a proven track record, which, by the way, wasn't true. But we were told, in the first half of the month, that this story was 100% reliable. Nintendo Land made videos about it. RGT85 made videos about it. Every other single circle jerking cocksucker in the community, other than myself, made endless amounts of content on this stuff. Talking about how much they hated Star Fox Zero and they wanted more like Assault, and how they didn't want a remake of 64, how they wanted a fully open world Star Fox game with furry sex mini games. Okay? We were told this by the community over and over and over again, that this announcement was a lock, that it was as good as real, and that we should get used to it. Oh, please don't pay attention to the actual games coming out though. Don't pay any attention to Rhythm Heaven. Don't pay attention to Splatoon Raiders. Don't pay any attention to Tamagotchi Life, which came out this month. Don't pay any attention to Pragmata. Let's talk about Star Fox, a game that was not confirmed to be real and yet was treated like it was. Nate the Hate was telling people that this was going to come out in June, which is unbelievably retarded. We were told that Star Fox was going to come out in June, as a bit of a marketing ploy because of the Super Mario Galaxy movie. Completely ignoring the fact that we already have our tie-in Mario Galaxy movie game with Yoshi and the Mysterious Book, which, by the way, a lot of these people really downplayed and ignored. So basically what we got, okay, the past couple of weeks, is that Nate the Hate made a bunch of, pretty easy, safe predictions based on things we already knew, okay? Splatoon Raiders was going to get confirmed. We knew it was going to happen because they told us it was coming around this time of year last year, okay? We were going to get, more Mysterious Book footage. We were going to get, a Rhythm Heaven announcement. All of this is stuff we already knew about. But because Nate the Hate threw in this weird hyperbolic statement that Star Fox was coming out in June, people really latched onto that. People really got excited. And in the end, they were completely let down because they put their faith in a leaker. They put their faith in a complete fraudster. They put their faith in YouTube rumors and speculation instead of waiting for an official announcement. You brought this on yourself. And this is the problem with the community, because, this has been happening for a long time, is that people get more excited about, hypothetical, fake announcements than the stuff that actually gets announced. Okay, this goes back even as, early as, the VGX. And probably even before that, because I remember, Reggie showed up with a Metroid pin, and people were freaking out, oh, he's going to announce, Retro's new Metroid Prime game. We're done with that Donkey Kong shit. They're going to go back to real games for adult gamers. And then they showed off, Cranky Kong in Tropical Freeze. And it was this hugely controversial thing that people just really, truly had, some serious problem with. Because at the time, the mindset was that Nintendo was ignoring the hardcore Western audience to focus exclusively on like casuals and the Japanese audience, and it was just such a ridiculous like mindset to be in. You know, especially consider Tropical Freeze would go on to be like this beloved Wii U game and like one of the best games on the console. But like, for me personally, you know, seeing this was like, it really opened my eyes to like the mindset of like league culture and like these terminally online weirdos, because they will spur the hell out about anything, but like not really pay any attention to like the stuff we are getting. Okay, they're so hyped up about open world Star Fox that they're completely neglecting like how great Mysterious Book looks. You know, they're neglecting how good Splatoon Raiders looks. Like, we have heard more about this fake Star Fox game over the past several days than we've ever heard from any of these other projects. And this is not an isolated incident. That's my problem with Nate the Fake. You know, that's my problem with Liam Robertson. Like, that's my problem with the Star Fox Grand Prix people. That's my problem with Laura Kate Dale. That's my problem with Emily Rogers, you know, the biggest name to ever do it. You know, the biggest fake leaker there's ever been in the Nintendo space. Like, why exactly is the community bending over backwards to try and protect these people? Because we're currently seeing this with the Nate the Hate community, where they're trying to tell you that, like, oh yeah, because Nate the Hate leaked this, they're delaying the announcement in order to surprise people and gaslight them into thinking the project isn't real, and then confirm it is real, and then surprising everyone again. First of all, this is like absolutely retarded and makes no sense. But second of all, like, if you have to like kind of like jump through hoops to gaslight yourself, like to try and convince people that Nate the Hate is a completely reliable leaker, even though, you know, this very specific leak was immediately proven wrong, like, you've already lost. It is like the simple fact of the matter is that, like, you assured us, you know, over and over and over again that Nate the Hate was completely and utterly 100% reliable, that this leak would come true, that it was a prophecy, that, like, you know, it was like, you know, somewhere in the Bible, okay, like, you know, that scientists proved that it was going to happen, you know, like, you had, like, you know, people on both political sides agreeing in unison that, like, oh yeah, Star Fox is totally coming out on Switch too. You had, like, I don't know. You had, like, you know, gaming journalists saying it's true. You had, like, you know, everybody in the community was, like, you know, in unison. Like, this is a completely and utterly verifiable fact that Star Fox is gonna get announced on Nintendo today before the end of April. Okay, not at the end of the month like so many people were coping, but, you know, in April. And then they would release it in June. Like, you are coping and seething about the fact that this did not happen. Okay, this has been the problem we've been seeing for, like, years and years and years and years. Like, this isn't anything new, but it is something that we do have to, like, talk about every single time it comes up. Because too many people in the industry, you know, who need clickbait, who need, like, things to talk about, will jump on these kind of stories and try to present them as if they're real. And honestly, I don't even think they're worth making videos on. Honestly, like, going forward, I've been saying this for years. I don't want to see people talking about these kind of leaks or speculation at all. Like, you know, if you see Nintendo Land or whatever, like, going off about stuff like this, like, you know, just don't even click on the video. Don't even, like, think about watching it. Okay? Because it's not true. It never will be true. And it's just a waste of everyone's time. Okay? Like, until there's, like, a complete and total rejection of, like, Nintendo Direct leak culture, like, this kind of thing is going to keep happening. We are going to see the same kind of things happen over and over and over again. And we're going to see people continue promoting Nate the Hate, promoting Liam Robertson, promoting Emily Rogers, promoting Laura Kate Dale as verifiable Nintendo insider leakers, even though everything they've talked about over the past several years has been completely and totally false. And no amount of coping about Nintendo canceling projects or changing their plans at the last minute is really going to like do anything to kind of like give them clout. You know, that's the thing now, is that like we actively need like an anti-Nintendo leak culture going forward in order to put a stop to this kind of thing. And that especially goes true even if the leaks are real. Because first of all, you know, leaks really do impact Nintendo's business plans and their announcement schedule, and it does cause real problems for them. So we shouldn't encourage this kind of thing anyway. But secondly, even when a leak is real, even if we get like information early, like all that does is just push this idea that these leakers are reliable. And as a, you know, if someone gets something right, that gives them like, you know, clout to like make up all sorts of like crazy nonsense and try and like catch lightning in a bottle twice, essentially. Like, again, there's no reason to pay attention to these people, even if they get something right. You know, and we're going to see a lot more of that because, you know, I think people really don't understand how difficult it is to, like, get real serious leaks out of Nintendo. Like, I think, again, people always go on about how Nintendo's always cracking down on leaks, but, like, do they not talk about what that means exactly? You know, how they're blacklisting people who get caught leaking things, how they're doing things, how they're, like, you know, you know, how they have measures taken, like, you know, security. Like, again, why would people risk their jobs and their careers to tell Nate the Hate that, like, Star Fox is coming out in April? Like, you know, like, oh yes, you're gonna find out about this in a couple of weeks anyway. But Nintendo's top secret project is Star Fox. Ooh, like it's like it doesn't make any sense. Like, it doesn't make any sense at all. And it's something that we do have to, like, kind of talk about. Because, yeah, there is no clout in leaking things online. You know, who remembers that guy who leaked, like, the Smash Bros. 3D roster ahead of time? You know, we got it, like, a couple of weeks ahead of time. You know, he was a playtester. He leaked it. What happened? You know, blacklisted from the industry, fired. Nobody even remembers who he is. You know, Byless actor, like, oh, I'm in the new Smash Bros. Game. You know, fired from Three Houses. Fired from Smash Ultimate. Fired from, like, you know, the industry at large. Why? For, like, clout? You know, for a game that, like, would have given him more value by simply staying associated with. Like, it doesn't make any sense. Like, that's the reality of what we're seeing here now, is that, like, the situation as it's presented by the journalists, by the community, by, like, the leakers, like, it's just not realistic. You know, like, people always make it seem as if there's some giant, like, organization that's, like, feeding Nate the Hate, like, information, and that, like, it's like some underground just community of people who are just doing this. And, like, it doesn't really make any sense. You know, unless you're willing to throw your entire life and career away for Nate the Hate to leak something, like, it doesn't make any sense. Like, the most I think you could possibly expect out of leaks going forward is that, like, you'll hear about promotional materials after they get sent out to, like, retailers. Like, there have been instances of that where, like, you know, Nintendo has produced things like ARMS and produced, like, you know, promotional material ahead of time before a formal announcement. And, like, of course, there are other companies involved at that point. And, you know, like, you know, you have promotional materials, like, you know, being sent out to, like, retailers and stuff like that. So, like, people can, like, you know, find out about it through those channels. But, like, you know, that's only, like, a couple of weeks ahead of time. Okay? Like, it's not that big of a deal at all. And again, like, this is the mindset we have to, like, be in going forward. Like, again, I'm so tired of these people complaining about not getting Nintendo Directs, not getting, like, major announcements from Nintendo, and then just turning around and just, like, obsessively covering things like this. You know? Like, it's just really embarrassing, and I think really demonstrates how desperate, like, the average Nintendo YouTuber is to avoid having to go out and get a job. Okay, like, that's the really frustrating thing about these people, is that, like, there simply isn't enough, like, Nintendo content to make a Nintendo channel on. And so they kind of have to like do this thing where they have to like manufacture controversy and like, you know, generate clicks and do anything to stay relevant. Like, this is one of the most embarrassing things I have ever seen coming out of the community. Nate the Hate is a complete fake.